Welcome to another episode of the Above the Business podcast. My name is Bradley Hamner, your host, founder and CEO of Blueprint OS, and the host of the Above the Business podcast. Actually, I don't really like that. I'm going to redo that one. Welcome to another episode of the Above the Business podcast. My name is Bradley Hamner, your host. I'm founder and CEO. No, I don't like that either. Actually, I'm just going to remove that. Welcome to another episode of the Above the Business podcast. My name is Bradley Hamner. Geez, why am I messing this up so much today, team? Good gracious. Welcome to another episode of the Above the Business podcast. My name is Bradley Hamner, your host. On today's episode, we have Collin Henderson. He's the founder and CEO of Master Your Mindset, a leader in the field of mental conditioning. Collin left his corporate role as the #1 ranked medical sales professional and national sales trainer to now be considered by many, including acclaimed broadcaster Jim Rome, one of the best mindset coaches in the industry. Collin has written 7 books and 2 journals, and his Master Your Mindset and his Master Your Mindset podcast has hundreds of thousands of downloads worldwide. Collin has personally trained #1 NBA draft picks, Heisman Trophy finalists, NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL athletes, and of course, corporate executives, small businesses, and entrepreneurs to get that mental edge. In this episode, we talk all things mental conditioning and just the inner dialogue that we have, whether it is in sport or in business. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Collin Henderson. Collin Henderson, welcome to the Above the Business podcast.
Bradley, what's happening, man? How are you?
Great to have you with us. So I always start with background and origin story. I love hearing how people kind of got to where they are. So why don't you take us back along your journey, wherever you feel is appropriate, and bring us to present day.
Yeah, let's start with the beginning. I'm a mindset coach, so author, speaker, travel really the world helping people to optimize their mindset. And if you had told me that when I was in high school and college, I'd be like, "What is a mindset coach?" But the origin of what got me here was like a lot of people, who whether you're in dancing, music, choir, band, there's stress, and you practice and train, and then you do well, and then when it comes to these big moments, you're like, why am I so nervous? I didn't understand like why I would get so nervous. And in college and high school, I also noticed that my self-worth was tied to the outcomes of basketball and baseball and different sports I was doing. So over time, in sales and business, kind of a similar challenge was you get your self-worth tied to the numbers, the rankings. So just being tired of feeling this way, I started to research and understand that it's all about the mind. I had a mentor I ran into when I was in business and sales, and he told me, Collin, there's all these books you can read on the power of mindset. So once being exposed to this content, I thought to myself, why was this stuff not taught in school? Why was this in onboarding in business? No one talks about, self-talk and how to visualize and all these things. So by doing that work, I spent about 2 years probably reading about 5 books a month and looking on YouTube, going to seminars, and just kind of trying to consume all these things. And then from that, I started blogging about this stuff. I started to apply these learnings. It was top sales professional, but I was healthier and happier, and had a side hustle while I was in sales, selling to urologists and hospitals. And now I do it full time.
Hmm. That's what does I was curious, what do you mean by we're going to get into all aspects of this because I'm pretty curious about it. Tell me about mental conditioning. I've actually never heard that terminology before.
Yeah. So there are 3 things we can train as humans: body, craft, mind. So I think when your body gets trained, you have a strength coach, you have a trainer where it gives you different lifts you can do, different exercises for cardio, for strength. So, and then you have probably business coaches or managers that teach you about craft. Here's how you do this part of your job and that part of your job. But the mind, you can condition the brain on confidence, resilience, being aware, self-awareness, being present, um, different. But so I would say to condition your brain is very similar to your body. So as a mental performance coach, we look at, I want everybody, for taking notes, write down the word prehab. So prehab is not waiting for a problem. So um, this aspect of mindset training is you do it daily, you do it proactively, you don't wait for a problem. So whether it's mindfulness, whether it's you visualize, whether it's journaling, whether it's practicing self-talk, whether it's habit formation, how to condition the right habits. So if I can summarize it in one sentence, it's you don't need to be sick to get better.
Hmm. How does someone, that's a good segue into the question I have. How does someone come to you typically? Do they, I was just trying to think through my own journey around how would I get to a place of knowing like I need a mindset coach. That's what I need. I need a mindset coach. Like how do people come to you typically?
Well, think about this. In the 50s, if someone said, I'm going on a run, you'd probably ask, are you getting chased?
Hmm.
If you said, I'm going to go to a cafe and buy coffee for $5, you're like, well, you have Folgers at home. Like, you're crazy. So we see jogging is very prevalent and common now. And going to Starbucks or whatever place you get your favorite coffee shop, that's very normal. So if you look at, follow the trend. So every pro organization has a mindset coach of some sort, has a psychologist or some kind that's doing this stuff. Not when there's a problem. I think everyone needs access to counseling and therapy, but I think what's our next edge in growth in business and in sport and in performance? I think that the mind is the next level that we haven't really tapped into.
Hmm.
So, and I didn't realize this, I had access as a college student athlete, strength coaches and trainers and all this stuff. But I had no idea, working harder physically doesn't guarantee you're going to do well in the field. Same thing in business, just grinding more doesn't mean you're going to have success. So
Hmm.
how people hear about me, I've been just really active online. I mean, just blogging. I've written 7 books, trying to really to make this normal. You have a strength coach, you don't have a mindset coach. I mean, if you think about it, everyone deals with stress, pressure, change,
Hmm.
hit with hardships. And unfortunately, people don't ask for help until there's a massive problem. And sometimes you get to a point where, man, I don't know if I can get through this. So I think what we're seeing now, a trend now where sport is doing this, business is now doing this, where you have a mental performance coach that comes in monthly or is available for the high level leaders that we're teaching leaders these concepts. Because if you just coach and manage your team members in business just on results and numbers on a spreadsheet, you're missing the boat.
Hmm.
And because of Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, this conversation has now grown. We have now made it normal to, I guess, ask for help or say, yo, I'm feeling stressed out today.
I so I played golf in college and looking back on it, um I mean I was a good player. I'm a decent player still now, but I don't play very much with young kids. Um but looking back on it, the area that I struggled the most with, sure, my short game could have been better. There's no question about that. But and I was never going to do anything more than what I did really in the game. But I definitely think that there was a element to my dad says this even now. I mean, my son is 13, he plays, and so he was telling Cooper this. He said, "Yep, Cooper, your dad just couldn't ever leave the previous hole, where it was. I couldn't ever leave the previous hole behind." And so you're right. Like it does make sense to where there's Bob Rotello obviously was one of the first ones in golf, and there's other ones too that when guys on tour talk about who's on their team, they have a golf performance psychologist. I've had Dr. Brett McCabe that's come on the podcast a couple of years ago. He's really great, and I know he works not just with golfers but a lot of other people as well. And so I think you're right. I think that it definitely had started in sport, and there's such a clear distinction in sport. Like we're watching the Olympics now, right? And you saw the 100-meter race and just how close it is, and the mindset of, or the guy that I can't remember the 1500 meters where he had that extra gear, and obviously there's physical training to have that extra gear, and how much sleep did he get, and how good did it's like all of that stuff, sure, but then there's also like that just the he found it deep down in a gear, and I'm saying that to say like in sport, there's such a clear differentiator that I feel like in business, it's hard to kind of see, well, what are the impacts of that, right? I mean, does it exactly show up as, my P&L immediately goes up, my profitability goes up, right? And people are like, what happened? I got a mindset coach, I'm curious how you have been able to translate something that is so clear, so much more clear in sport. How do you, because obviously our audience is entrepreneurs and small business owners, how do you translate that over to business?
Yeah, so when I work with college sports organizations, pro organizations, we talk about next play speed. How fast can you get to the next play? The last play is over. How fast can you get in a business to the next sales call, the next meeting? Or are you still hung up like your dad said about you? Are you hung up on the last call? So really teaching any human being, are you present? Are you aware? Do you have tools to recover quickly and not let a bad 5 minutes turn to a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, a bad week turn to a bad quarter, a bad year? And it's all in your mind. Can you lock in and focus on what's most important, what's important now, and have systems in place where you can learn from the mistake, you can move on. And I think, like I referenced earlier, in business, we are defined by results. I mean, how you get promoted, how you get awarded, recognized. So I think a lot of us put all this pressure on ourselves. So if I can just peel back, and if I'm working with an organization and like, well, how do you measure if this even works? Well, I think a direct correlation is business, sales, and sport are the same thing. Argue to me how they're different. You're competing against another organization or another sales professional, another company that's buying for business from someone else. There's a winner and a loser, correct? Right? And oftentimes you have to share information or bring value to that client, and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and based upon how well that interaction goes, whether you get the business, whether you keep that client or not. So I mean, argue with me that business, sales, and sports are not very close, right? They're the
I think
same.
there's a lot of parallels to that. I don't know if I mean, if you're specifically asking me, I love sport. I do not think that they're exactly the same. I mean, business is an infinite game and sport is a finite game. There's clear winners and losers in business in sport, but there's not in business. I mean, that's how I think about it. You can disagree with that for sure, but business. The whole point of business is to stay in business and to be profitable. So I do think there's a tremendous amount of parallels, but no, I don't think that they're the same.
Well, it was similar with an athlete or in business, whether you keep the client or don't, whether you stay on the roster or not. I mean, I guess we can argue that, but needless to say, there is pressure, and we both sides feel
That's
pressure.
true.
So basically, it's managing pressure. Like, can you maintain your role? I mean, if you're not delivering, you get either demoted or you get on a plan, and so there's pressure to have to show up
Hmm.
a certain way and have to deliver. So I would just say they're very close. So giving someone tools to navigate the pressure and uncertainty and change and failure. And how do we talk through it as a team? What's a common language that we're going to utilize to navigate pressure and change? Um, how do we look at process over outcome? Measure different habits and behaviors and actions that we can celebrate versus just a result. But if I was looking at, let's just use sales for an example, I think that's the easier one. Is the team? Can we measure working with a mindset coach in this space? Are they getting more calls each week, each month, each quarter? Because if you're more present, more engaged, and you're more focused, odds are you're not going to be hung up on the last call,
Hmm.
or you're able to focus on, okay, these are things are pulling my attention away, my focus away. Can I lock in? And do I have great systems in place with my habits and behaviors and my, whether it's routing or how many calls I'm making per day? And I think you can survey like just how good are we feeling morale wise? I mean, do I feel like I'm equipped to navigate a change in the day? I'm equipped to navigate a setback in the day. How fast can we move on from what has just happened? The other thing I usually have people kind of evaluate is just language. How negative are we? Do we only focus on problems? Do we bitch and make excuses all the time? Like, just kind of give them resources on and some evidence-based tools, like how negative, when you verbalize how negative things are and how we can't do things, like how that just stops us from growing. And then you can measure, are we growing revenue? I mean, that's a simple measure. And then there's a lot of things that would come into play there, but where we are now, how's our language, how are our habits and behaviors, how fast can we get on to the next moment, and growth, whatever things that you want to measure, whether it's sales or not.
What are your thoughts around nonverbal self-talk? So, the things I say to the team are neutral or positive, but the internal dialogue that I have with myself is, I mean, sometimes it may be positive, sometimes it's neutral, but I can be my harshest critic as an example. What are your thoughts around the non-expressed self-talk?
So there's two things. I think it's your inner dialogue. If I look at where does confidence come from, research from the BBC lab in the UK, 44,000 patients measuring confidence, they found that self-talk was the number one driver. So your inner dialogue has a direct impact. So the brain thinks in 4 dimensions. So a word creates a picture the brain sees, emotion the body feels, a belief that we hold. So I think a simple win that I could teach any performer, any age, is your inner voice. How's your self-talk? Because I think that is one of the huge things that I would train any person. So we can look at that in a few ways. The brain, we are creatures of habit. And I'm guessing a lot of us have this soundtrack from our past mistakes and failures that it's on this loop. So 4 out of 5 thoughts are negative, 9 out of 10 are reoccurring. So we're recycling hurtful self-talk that's influencing your beliefs and behaviors. So can we just, number one, recognize, is this thought even true? What are some negative thought tracks that my brain has been wired to do? And one of the first books I read is Positive Intelligence by Shirzad Sharmin, and he talks about how we have this inner judge, and your brain is wired for that. It's wired to look at threats and danger, and a lot of the things that we're trying to, just to tell ourselves, it's not really true. So we can label some of these thought patterns. That's my inner judge. It's not the real me. And then have a way to transition. That's where I would say let's pre-plan some thinking that you can move to a better place. So think about, when you were golfing. I mean, I'll bet you 99% of your training was how do I hit the ball? It's your approach and your hit. But did you train those 1 to 3 minutes in between each swing? When you're
Mm.
walking in between each swing, are you disciplined with your thinking on being able to release the last shot? What are you going to say to yourself to guide your thinking, to guide your feelings, to guide what you're going to focus on in the next swing, and just be really present? So I would say that's true, but you're also with your how you walk around, a posture, that also is also huge. So a simple drill that I would teach people is, when something goes bad and you go palms up and make excuses and shrug, and we got to go palms down and say, hey, we can learn from this. This isn't over.
So I'm curious on the confidence thing. Um, and I don't know exactly how he says it, but Alex Hermosi says something to the like, yeah, I developed confidence by having a stack of evidence in my favor. And what I think I'm curious is he's basically saying, yeah, I got a stack of outcomes that's true. And so that's where I develop confidence. Do you agree with that or disagree with that?
I would agree with that, but it sounds like he's reminding himself that he has put in the work and he has achieved some good things. So he's earned the right to be credible with that self-talk.
Mm.
Because you can say affirmations that are not rooted in truth, and
Hmm.
that's not going to hold up. So what I love that he's saying is, he's going back to truth and saying, I have achieved high levels of achievement. I have done the work. I have achieved a level of success. So he's reinforcing, because what is true is the brain keeps a scoreboard of all your failures. The brain is designed to survive, not thrive. So it wants you to be safe. It wants you to not try new things. It wants you to, not look stupid in front of your peers. So it's going to tell you, probably shouldn't try that, because remember that one time when you did this? Remember, your body keeps the score. Remember that time when you did that and you felt that blanket of shame come over you? Don't do that again. So what he's doing is he's challenging what this old brain is trying to tell him, to play it safe and to not make mistakes, and you can't fail. You're not loved. You're not worthy. He's like, actually, you know what? I have done well here. So there's no reason why I can't do it here. That's what I would say.
what happens? How do then we approach when there is something that, let's just say hypothetically in the business, that does not go the way that I want it to go? We botch a rollout or we have an event, virtual or not virtual, and it just bombs. It just bombs. I mean, the reality is it bombed. Okay. I mean, like
Mhm.
we thought we would do X and we did Y and it wasn't even close. How do I then take that and what's the right way to approach it when there is absolutely facts of things did not turn out the way that I wanted them to. Maybe even, maybe even we set these targets for this quarter as a business. We did not hit them. Let's just say, okay? Or we said we were going to achieve this goal for the year, didn't happen. And so, I hear you, Colin, but what I'm saying, I'm giving a hypotheticals here, basically, of like, yeah, but what do I do when we legitimately didn't fail? I understand I need to
Mhm.
be very process oriented, not outcome, focused all the time. But at the end of the day, we got to hit some growth goals here, and we're not hitting them. So what's the right way to approach it whenever things just don't go the way that we want them to?
The first thing I would coach anybody here is to master these 5 words. I'm not defined by this. I think once you let your self-worth be defined by a result, that's very dangerous. But at the same time, you don't want a result or outcome to define you. You have to take ownership of it as well. So a healthy ownership is, adopting what Dr. Carol Dweck calls having a growth mindset is let's get validation in effort and in learning. So going to truth, what worked, what didn't? What was my part in this? Where can we get better as a team? And if I'm not, um, if my self-worth isn't tied to this result, what some new things can we adopt? What's some more coaching, or what's a different way we can approach this this task? So I think not allowing it to flow into your self-worth, but also we have to take ownership. This is business. This is kind of like we're talking about sport. If you don't get the job done, you get cut. So um, let's find ways and realize that it's a long life. Business, it's a long process. You're going to have some wins, you're going to have some losses, and that's, if you go into it knowing that, I'm not going to, the goal is to win every deal, but I know sometimes that doesn't happen. But you have to go back to the drawing board. And again, I'm not defined by this role. I'm a human being choosing to play a part of this business. Doesn't define my self-worth. And then take the ownership. Okay, what can we learn from this?
Yeah, my identity was definitely tied up in my performance. There's
Yeah,
no
that's
question about it.
why that's why I really struggle too.
Yeah. Yeah. Business does good. I think highly of I think better of myself, you know. Business doesn't do so well. Um and sometimes it gets hard. Sometimes it gets hard if you're, a driven person to even sometimes accept compliments or praise from other people. It's easy to uh like I've really worked on this myself, to be willing to accept and hear what someone says. Hey, you did that. That was a really excellent job, and actually allow myself to sit in that and say, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Versus I used to immediately just go like, yeah, you know what? Thanks. But like that wasn't good. 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 And I actually had a buddy of mine recently say something because I gave a back and they said, stop with the false humility BS. And I was like, what? Okay. That was okay. And it was great. So, I was, I appreciative of them saying that he said, hey man, just take the compliment. I was like, okay, I appreciate that. And it was a good reminder for me of like, yeah, see, I still have this tendency of doing it, even if I can't, even if I feel like I'm getting better at it.
So have you changed that now after that experience?
Well, yeah, yes, but truly, I feel like I've done the last couple of years done a better job of doing it. That specific instance was a good reminder. Um, well, look, I'll just tell people what he said. He said, Bradley, you're a great entrepreneur. And I said, entrepreneur, yes, great. Haha, no way. That's what I said. And then he came back with that answer, right? And so, and I was like, yep, see, there it is again. I deflect. I deflect versus that was a moment I could have heard that and that would have been like, oh, I appreciate somebody else seeing that, you know? And so I think I've definitely gotten better at it, Colin, for sure. I really
Hmm.
genuinely have gotten better at it. But that was a good reminder that,
Hmm.
see, there's still work to do with that. You know, there's still work
Yeah,
to do in that area.
what's interesting is high level college performers I work with, and even pros. There's a player in baseball in the major leagues. One of the hardest things, one of the drills we did is to write down achievements that you are really like proud of, like things that you've earned the right to be at this position because it was a contract year, and just write down some achievements that you're proud of, and he really couldn't do it. It was really hard for him. He's like, I just
Mm,
been trained to be so hard on myself because if I feel like I'm overly nice, I'm not going to train as hard. And I was like, man, but you're hitting 239, you've hit 30 bombs. Let's get your average up to 275. It's going to probably help you by affirming, these are the pitches I hit well. This is the
hmm
series I've done well. This is, month of the season where I was on fire. And I can do that and get clues about yourself when you're optimizing during those times.
mm,
So um, you aren't the only one.
yeah, yeah. I think, not everybody that's in business has got an athletic background, but a lot of people do. A lot of people do. I think that there's a reason why there's so many entrepreneurs that have, athletic backgrounds. Um, in general is because and there is, like I said earlier, I think there are some incredible attributes to sport and how it applies over to business. I don't think it's a direct one-to-one for sure, but I think that there is a lot of tremendous lessons. Resiliency, I mean, batting 300 or whatever as an example, or plays into that. All right, so last couple questions is um how do I can look back on this around, all right. So I love what you said. I'm not defined by this, but you'll yet still take ownership. And what I can look back on is I used to toggle between two extremes. It was like almost like a gas tank. I was either like way over here on one side or on the other side. And here's what it was. I was either so driven that I would just absolutely break everybody because I was just like such a doggedness and determination that by gosh, come hell or high water, we're going to hit this thing. And then I would go the other way and be too laissez-faire with it, right? And there was never this throttling and balancing act of like, what's the right way to kind of land? What's your thoughts on that?
In terms of grinding super hard and having the balance of recognizing I'm going too hard, or like what's the healthy balance? Maybe ask me again.
I think it was where I've shared this before and other um people listening and clients have shared a similar sentiment is that they struggle to regulate their own emotions around certain things. And so what ends up happening is I'm not even talking about them themselves grinding hard. I'm talking about that it outwardly they grind the team to death, right? To hit
Mm,
a goal in the business. Like it's just
mm,
like I'm just going to grind and grind and grind and grind and grind. And
mm,
then they back way off of it and then they become like it doesn't really matter kind of thing. And then there's this like toggling back and forth between driving so hard and then being too soft, being too hard,
mm.
being too
Yeah.
soft. And that could apply to the business, but it also could apply individually. Sometimes like,
Hmm.
golly, this person is on me all the time. And then you back off too far,
Yep.
right? And you're not holding people accountable. And so I know that people have really, because they've shared with me that they've struggled with where's the happy medium between the two of those.
That's a great conversation to have, especially for leaders. So it goes back to this phrasing, are you grinding or are you grooving? As a leader, I want to stop glorifying the grind. I'm coaching an executive right now and she's getting 4 hours of sleep. And we spent most of our time, our first coaching call, in designing frameworks, designing systems. I love James Clear. He says, "We're going to rise to our goals. We fall to level of our systems." And that is getting better systems in her day to day to calm down at night and to wind down at night and get at least 6 hours. So if you're a singer and you're over singing, you're not going to be able to sing because your voice is going to be gone. If you're a dancer and your feet aren't recovered well, you're not going to be able to dance very well. So I think in business we have to create standards and systems around how can I reach this level of output, but I think rest is also important. But
Mm.
and then it's kind of talking about it as a team. What are some standards of how hard we're grinding, but to recover, here are some other standards that we're gonna use.
Mm. Love that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's such a good book. Atomic Habits. That's one I'd be well suited to revisit.
Yeah, and Bradley,
Colin,
I got my daughter's throwing up right now. Can you pause just for 1 second?
yeah, sure.
Give me a second.
No worries. Colin, people want to connect with you. Where would you point them to?
I would check out Collin Henderson on LinkedIn and Instagram. On Amazon, I've written 7 books and 2 journals. There's a spot too.
Awesome. Colin, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Sounds good. Thank you.
You know, I do absolutely believe that the internal game that happens between our ears is so incredibly important, not just in sport, but in business. And the dialogue that we have, the inner dialogue, as he mentioned, is so critical. I actually have never thought about a mental coach. Really, is kind of why I genuinely try to ask questions from my own perspective. So hopefully those come across, but also think about when maybe what are some of the questions you all would ask. So that really resonated with me. And I also just loved, I'm not defined by this, but I'm going to own this. I really loved that part of it. So make sure you connect with Colin on social. Check out what he's got going on LinkedIn, Instagram, etc. Shout out to our podcast partners, Coach P Consulting, Club Capital, Autopilot Recruiting. If you want to be able to have a tool in your, we talk about tool set, mindset, skill set, tool set. Talked about mindset a lot today. Want to have a great tool for you and your team to use? Go to Autopilot Recruiting. Oops, I messed that up, team. If you want a great tool to have in your toolbox, go to todayappro.com, todayappro.com, a tool that integrates your custom word tracks that you have. Of course, it's going to sync with your corporate approved CRM and is just easy to use. I love Excel spreadsheets, Google Sheets. Those have their place. But when you're trying to track your bonus and your compensations, having it all in one place, and that is not only just one place, but also beautiful to use. It's exactly what you get with Today App. Go to todayappro.com. Oftentimes we know the language of the different hats that we need to wear in business. And one of the hats that we need to wear in business is the hat of being able to understand our financials in a way. We don't have to be the CFO per se in our business, but we can start to learn some of the skills in business. So that is absolutely something that we learn to be able to make better decisions, whether that's marketing, can we hire somebody on the team? When's the right time to bring someone else on? How's that going to affect our profitability? And how does that also affect our growth? And the balance of growth and profitability is a delicate balance to be able to have. I used to think that growth equaled profit. The reality is growth eats profit. And so finding the right balance between growth and profitability is key. That's when you can work with Club Capital. Go to club.capital. I don't know if you ever thought about with your team as a similar pipeline to the way that you would work a lead to a prospect to a customer. I first heard Alex and Layla Hormozy talk about this, but one aspect, once you bring them on board, you then nurture them and develop them so they can continue to grow and develop. They acquire new skills so that they become more valuable to the company. And training and developing your team is critical, and Coach P can help you. Go to coachpconsulting.com, coachpconsulting.com. He's going to share with you what is working now for them and their team and share with you some behind the scenes things that they're doing that have helped them to be able to scale to the way that they have. coachpconsulting.com. Hey everyone, what I do and what we do at Blueprint, we help people go from being the rainmaker to becoming the architect of their business. And we would love to help you, to give you a free tool to help you to do that. We call it our Rainmaker Architect Starter Kit. If you go to my website, blueprintos.com/assets, blueprintos.com/assets, you can get access to my Starter Kit mini course. It's got some training videos on there, along with several different assets that can help you. blueprintos.com/assets. All right, everyone. Till next episode, lead well.